To me that so many people so easily listen to the propaganda and they believe that doing anything other than these garbage 45-day extensions, these spending continuing resolutions for basically decades now is normal. And how they think it's good for anything or good for anybody or that they actually accomplish anything absolutely blows my mind. Same fight over and over again. But take a look at what Vivek Ramaswamy has to say on this topic. I could not say it any better.
Well, the first thing I want to say about the government shutdown debate broadly is I think it's a fake and artificial debate, if we're being really honest about it. What happens every time? The government comes back, all the employees get their back pay, and generally the government comes back bigger every time. Even the $1.5+ trillion that the so-called, I would say, fiscal hawk conservatives are proposing is still the largest federal budget that we will have ever had, right? And so I think that right answer has to be thinking on the timescales of history. I actually applaud the Republicans who are holding a firm line on this. We have to drive deep cuts. So rather than talking about a fake shutdown debate, I'd actually prefer proposing a real government shutdown of the administrative state, of those three-letter agencies in Washington, D.C., the people who we never elected to run the government, who are the ones who are actually running the government. 75% headcount reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats, rescind a majority of those unconstitutional federal regulations. And I think that unlocks the economy, Neil. That also unlocks prosperity in this country. Zero-based budgeting. That's what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. as the president. Start with zero as the baseline and then ask exactly what's necessary, rather than starting with last year as the assumed baseline. That'll take a CEO in the White House. There isn't a state in this union that does it today. The federal government's never done it. That's exactly how I will run the federal government. And that's exactly how we address our national debt while also doing it in a sane manner.
So yeah, I mean, absolutely right. But we all know by now that some of the people that actually do believe that a continuing resolution is actually good for something and that we have to literally keep kicking the can down the road like we have for freaking decades now, the people who really believe this, they're basically all congressional Republicans.
If somebody wants to make a motion against me, bring it. There has to be an adult in the room.
So are you going to do it? Or are you going to move to oust him?
Kevin McCarthy's going to get his wish. I don't think the adult in the room would allow America to sit atop a $33 trillion debt facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. I don't think the adult in the room would allow $8 trillion of this debt to come into refinancing at a higher level without serious spending cuts. And I don't think the adult in the room would lie to House conservatives. And that is exactly what Kevin McCarthy did.
All right, I want you to listen to what Hakeem Jeffries said after the...
Oh, Kevin's new boss. Let's hear from him.
I like that. Kevin's new boss. Matt Gaetz, he is quickly... The dude is not playing, man. And he is literally becoming probably my favorite politician. So yeah, as usual, our government will continue to be funded. Big surprise there. And again, as usual, another big surprise. Nothing is going to be accomplished between now and 45 days from now. I promise you that. We're going to do this all again very, very soon. And if I'm wrong about that, first, I'll be very, very surprised. But if they can come to a real agreement on spending before the clock runs out, my word right now, I will pick the best comment from this video and I'll donate $1,000 to charity of your choice if they can. Because here's the thing. If it happens, which it won't, but if it happens, it will be fully because of people like Matt Gaetz. This dude is not playing around.
Madam Speaker, the continuing resolution being offered today is a bad deal for Republicans. The entire premise of this continuing resolution is that if Republicans surrender on every single issue except the border, that it will be good politics because we will force the Democrats to defend bad border policy. But, Madam Speaker, surrender has been a virus that has afflicted my fellow Republicans for far too long. To prove the point, just look at the border policies that we're supposedly fighting for. The border policies that Republicans will argue for this morning represent a retreat from the border policies we took last night. Last night we said we wouldn't fund DHS unless E-Verify was passed because they had to take up H.R. 2. Now we're saying we will give Mayorkas and the Biden administration more money even if they don't pass E-Verify. So overnight, in the last 11 hours, the Republican border position has gotten weaker through this continuing resolution. That's why I'm voting against it. We cannot be serious about border security without E-Verify. I will fight for E-Verify. 11 hours ago, the Republicans fought for E-Verify, and now the white flag of surrender.
So all he's talking about, this E-Verify thing, federal database, if you guys aren't familiar, and all it's supposed to do is ensure that the people filling the jobs here are legal to do that. Seems like a completely, perfectly reasonable thing to ask. But here's the thing. He and only a few others in Congress, maybe Andy Biggs from Arizona, maybe only a few actually care about the border. You know, that's a problem that I don't think any side will solve or wants to solve, especially the way they're currently constructed. And the only person really, truly, who's ever actually tried do something about the border was Donald Trump. And the way that Republicans stood in his way should honestly tell us anything we ever need to know about them, this issue, and the kind of people we're dealing with. Well, here's the thing. Matt Gaetz was not one of those Republicans. And it appears the dude is not messing around. Here he is just 2 weeks ago, basically threatening McCarthy. And this is, keep in mind, this is like the day after McCarthy did the impeachment inquiry. So this dude is not playing.
On this very floor in January, the whole world witnessed a historic contest for House Speaker. I rise today to serve notice. Mr. Speaker, you are out of compliance with the agreement that allowed you to assume this role. The path forward for the House of Representatives is to either bring you into immediate total compliance or remove you pursuant to a motion to vacate the chair. We have had no vote on term limits or on balanced budgets as the agreement demanded and required. There's been no full release of the January 6 tapes as you promised. There has been insufficient accountability for the Biden crime family. And instead of cutting spending to raise the debt limit, you relied on budgetary gimmicks and rescissions so that you ultimately ended up serving as the valet to underwrite Biden's debt and advance his spending agenda. Mr. Speaker, you boasted in January that we would use the power of the subpoena and the power of the purse. But here we are, 8 months later, and we haven't even sent the first subpoena to Hunter Biden. That's how you know that the rushed and somewhat rattled performance you just saw from the Speaker isn't real. At this point, during Democrat control over the House of Representatives, they had already brought in Don Jr. 3 times. And we haven't even sent the first subpoena to Hunter Biden.
So of all the people in Congress on both sides who literally support illegal immigration, Matt Gaetz is not one of them. He doesn't seem to have the lust that most of our government does for war. And that's, of course, has been a pretty good sticking point and will continue to be another major sticking point in the funding of our government, whether or not we're going to continue to bleed money in Eastern Europe. So that's what happened here. Kevin McCarthy basically could not get Republican support for a spending bill, primarily because of the war in Ukraine and his support for it and their support for it. So what did he do? He went over to the Democrats in an absolute panic and worked with them to cobble together another weak, feckless, continuing resolution without any talk or decision on Ukraine. So that's actually a good point. That's one good thing he did. So our government can stay open. And basically, there's now going to be a fight that's going to happen to secure their money for Ukraine. But I got to ask, even the folks, and by the way, he would have given in on Ukraine if he thought he could have got away with it and kept his job. There's zero doubt he would have done it. But I got to ask, even the folks that believe that we should be doing exactly what we're doing or more in Ukraine, do you really believe that we should be the only ones helping? If it really is as important as you guys say, won't their neighbors and shouldn't their neighbors, the one with something actually to lose to an advancing Russia, actually chip in and pay up? Let me know in the comments.
I have very good news for the country. Democrats and Republicans have come to an agreement, and the government will remain open. We will have avoided a shutdown. Bipartisanship, which has been the trademark of the Senate, has prevailed, and the American people can breathe a sigh of relief. But this is a bridge CR, and Leader McConnell and I have agreed to continue fighting for more economic and security aid for Ukraine. We support Ukraine's efforts to defend its sovereignty against Putin's aggression. So thank you to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their excellent work. The bipartisanship here in the Senate set the tone for today's result, and I hope it sets the tone for the future. I yield the floor.
Dude, I absolutely cannot freaking stand that guy. And he's an absolute fool. He's lying if he thinks that Speaker McConnell or whatever, Minority Leader McConnell is really on the other side of the aisle from him. Ridiculous. There's no way he believes that. Let me know in the comments if you believe that. So here's what's happening here. Republicans in the House, they're trying to negotiate really, really aggressive spending cuts. They want real change on Ukraine. They want real change on the border. And that, of course, keeps failing because Democrats and some weak Republicans, they will never, ever support anything that's pro-American or anything that's anti-war, which is crazy when you think about what Democrats have historically stood for. So it went from that to Kevin McCarthy working with Democrats to give them literally everything they want, except for Ukraine. But I guarantee you, like I said, that if he could have gotten away with that and kept his job, he'd have given them that also. So what he got done was zero on spending cuts, nothing on the border, and apparently rumors have it a closed-door promise to get them the funding that they want for Ukraine as well, which is exactly why we now have Matt Gaetz making the rounds and promising that he's going to hold up to his word and he's going to get rid of Speaker McCarthy. Let's have a look at this, guys. But before we do, thanks to everyone that's been subscribing and leaving such great comments. We're building an awesome community together. We're having a lot of fun. Guys, if you haven't already, please help us with the algorithm. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share the channel. Check this out.
Are you going to make a motion to vacate?
Speaker McCarthy made an agreement with House conservatives in January, and since then he has been in brazen, repeated material breach of that agreement. This agreement that he made with Democrats to really blow past a lot of the spending guardrails we'd set up is a last straw, and then overnight I learned that Kevin McCarthy had a secret deal with Democrats on Ukraine. So as he was baiting Republicans to vote for a continuing resolution without Ukraine money, saying that we were going to jam the Senate on Ukraine, he then turns around and makes a secret deal. Now, I know you and I probably have different views on U.S. involvement in Ukraine, but however you think about that question, it should be subject to open review, analysis, and not some backroom deal.
So I do motion to vacate tomorrow?
I do intend to file a motion to vacate against Speaker McCarthy this week. I think we need to rip off the Band-Aid. I think we need to move on with new leadership that can be trustworthy. Look, the one thing everybody has in common is that nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. He lied to Biden. He lied to House conservatives. He had appropriators marking to a different number altogether. And the reason we were backed up against this shutdown politics is not a bug of the system, it's a feature. Kevin McCarthy's goal was to make multiple contradictory promises, to delay everything, back us up against shutdown politics, and at the end of the day, blow past the spending guardrails he'd agreed to.
So how many Republicans do you think will be with you in your motion to vacate? Because obviously for people at home who don't know, you need 218 votes to get him out of the speakership. You don't have 218 Republican votes. You're going to need Democrats. Let's start with the Republicans. How many Republicans do you have?
Well, enough so that when you host this show next week, if Kevin McCarthy is still the Speaker of the House, he will be serving at the pleasure of the Democrats. He will be working for the Democrats. The only way Kevin McCarthy is Speaker of the House at the end of this coming week is if Democrats bail him out. Now, they probably will. I actually think that when you believe in nothing, as Kevin McCarthy does, everything's negotiable.
Okay, but
I think he'll cut a deal with the Democrats.
Let's be honest here, though, because if you succeed in vacating him, you also will have to make a deal with the Democrats. You also will have to get Democratic votes to kick him out.
Absolutely. I will make no deal with Democrats and concede no terms to them. I actually think Democrats should vote against Speaker McCarthy for free. I don't think I should have to deal them
anything.
anything.
You're not going to cut any deals with him?
Absolutely not. And I don't think that any Republicans that share my view on Speaker McCarthy would cut deals with Democrats. But here's the thing. I'm done owning Kevin McCarthy. Right? We made a deal at the end of in January to allow him to assume the speakership, and I'm not owning him anymore because he doesn't tell the truth. And so if Democrats want to own Kevin McCarthy by bailing him out, I can't stop him, but then he'll be their speaker, not mine. So
wow, yeah, so there you have it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of politics being played here. You know, we'll see if Gaetz has the follow-through or really if he has the appetite for all that. You know, There's already whispers from Democrats that they would be willing to save McCarthy from losing his job if they can work out some sort of power sharing agreement with him, which is A, completely ridiculous, and B, I can absolutely see Republicans being weak enough to allow that to happen. And of course, with everything going on right now, budgets, wars, border issues worse than they've ever been, and the first real opportunity to prove to the American people just how crooked and corrupt the Biden family really is, you know, that's honestly the last thing we need. They do not need any kind of brokered power. But anyway, guys, that's just my take. Let me know yours in the comments. And don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. We'll see you in the next one.